This is the back page on the advanced pre-algebra review. I think we actually did, at least the year I'm making this video, we did this one very first, but it's the very last page on the review sheet. So I got a blank one so I could work through it with you and not just talk about how I worked through it. But here we go. Our goal is to get the variable by itself. To do that, we always have to do the opposite of what's happening to the variable right now. So v plus negative 12. So right now we're adding negative 12. So that's the same as subtracting a positive 12. So if they'd written the problem this way, that would mean the same thing. I'm just applying keep, change, because you'd keep the v positive, change the positive, the plus to a subtraction, and the negative to a positive. And you don't have to do this, but I'm showing you this step to hopefully help you see why the correct thing to do to get rid of a negative 12 is to add 12 to both sides. That's the only way we can cancel it out. And you can do it in this first step, just add 12 to both sides, that's fine. But I wanted to help you understand why adding 12 is the answer. So then we get v is less than negative 11. Now this time v is having 18 added to it. So the opposite of adding 18 is subtracting 18. So we get 10 is less than v. And it's completely fine to leave your answer this way. Now I'm not going to do this for every problem, but for this one I will. And it's shown both ways on the written answer key. You can definitely just leave your answer this way, but if you prefer to have the variable on the left, all you do is just write this backwards. So put the v, flip this around so it's greater than, and put the 10 this way. Because saying 10 is less than v is the same thing as saying v is bigger than 10. If 10 is smaller than v, then v is bigger than 10. So again, I won't flip that or show that on all of them, but I wanted to on that one. On 39, keep in mind this is a positive 10. So this is really a negative v that's having a 10 added to it. So we would need to subtract 10 from both sides. You always want to do the opposite of whatever sign is directly in front of the 10. Just like back here, the sign directly in front of the 12 was negative. We wanted to add 12 to get rid of it. Here the sign right in front of the 10 is positive, so we need to subtract 10 to get rid of it. Sorry, it'd be positive 19, my fault. Positive 19 is greater than negative v. But we can't leave the answer with a negative v, so we're going to divide both sides by negative 1 to get rid of that negative. So we get negative 19, and anytime you multiply or divide by a negative number, you have to flip the inequality sign, so we'd flip it to be less than, and have negative 19 is less than v. Okay, 14, k is being multiplied by negative 11, so we need to do the opposite and divide by negative 11. And you can use your calculator to do this, but 209 divided by negative 11 is negative 19. And because we divided by a negative number, we have to flip this inequality sign to be greater than or equal to, and we leave the k there. Okay, these next four are going to be two-step problems. And you got to think you need to move what's farthest away from the variable first. Here's what I mean. That x and that 5 are tight. They're in the same fraction together. Whereas the 6 is kind of off by itself, not part of the fraction. So I need to move the 6 first. I'll add 6 to both sides. Negative 9 plus 6 is negative 3. And then x is being divided by 5, so I need to do the opposite and multiply by 5. And you may be saying, well, wait a minute, why didn't we flip the sign? We just multiplied by a negative number. So I don't know if I'm saying this often or not, but the issue is that you've got to change it when you're multiplying or dividing both sides by a negative number. So if you look back at number 3, I was dividing both sides by -1. That's what required me to flip the sign. On number 5, I'm multiplying both sides by +5. It doesn't matter what this sign is. What matters is what I'm multiplying both sides by. Since I'm multiplying both sides by a positive number, this sign does not have to change direction. Okay, 6 is very similar. The x and the 4 are tight together because they're in the same fraction. The -6 is off by itself. The way to get rid of a -6 is to add 6 to both sides. So we get x over 4 is less than -5. And then x is being divided by 4, so we can get rid of that by multiplying both sides by 4. And again, because what we're multiplying both sides by is a +4, there's no need to change the direction of the inequality sign. I will do number 7, but because, for a reason I think you'll see in a second, I want to go and do 8. Because honestly, 5, 6, and 8 are very similar in structure. You've got a little fraction, then with some other number along with it. So again, r and 2 are tight together in the same fraction. So the thing farther away from the variable is the -6, so I'll add 6 to both sides. R is being divided by 2, so I can get rid of that by multiplying both sides by 2. -2 times 2 is -4, and because the number I'm multiplying both sides by is a +2, I don't have to change the inequality sign's direction. Okay, so look for a second if you can at the way 8, 6, and 5 are structured versus number 7. Because we actually did adding or subtracting as our first step on 5, 6, and 8 because they had one small little fraction and then a number off by itself. Whereas 7 has a big fraction. This entire left side is a fraction. So while these are all in a fraction together, it's the -9 and the n that are closer together because they're in the same part of the fraction. They're both on top. The 3 is kind of separated from them by this line. So the first step here would be to multiply both sides by 3. That'd be, sorry, that's a times, not negative. -9 times 3 is -27. And then we have a -9, so we need to add 9 to both sides. Get n is less than -18. Okay, the back side is all equations, but it's really actually quite similar to what we did. The operations are all going to work the same way, but the equations are a little easier because you don't have to remember that special rule about, oh, if I multiply or divide both sides by a negative number, I don't have to flip it. Well, there's no sense in flipping an equal sign. So remember, your goal is to do the opposite of what's happening to the variable so you can get it by itself. Right now, x is being divided by 2. So you do the opposite and you multiply it by 2 on both sides. These 2's cancel, leaving just x. -18 times 2 is -36. Okay, this is similar to, I think, number 1 on the front of the page. K plus a -10. We want to do the opposite of whatever sign is directly in front of that number. So when it's a -10, we want to add 10 to both sides so we can cancel it out. -20 plus 10 is -10. Okay, 11, m is being divided by 17. So to undo that, we need to multiply both sides by 17. So 17 times -13, feel free to use your calculator to help you there, is -221 equals m. And it's fine to leave it that way. If you want to write it as m equals -221, that's of course the same thing too. X is being multiplied by 8, so doing the opposite is dividing both sides by 8. Those 8's cancel, and 0 divided by 8 is 0. So we get x equals 0. And just like on the front of the page, these last 4 are going to be 2 steps we have to do to solve it. So always start with whatever's farther away from the variable. So like here, you've got this 4 that's attached to it. It's 4p. They're very close together. This 4 is farther away. So we want to move this 4 first. It's being added to it, so we do the opposite. We subtract 4 from each side. Then we divide both sides by 4 to get rid of the fact it was being multiplied by 4. And we get 13 equals p. Okay, 14, we have this big fraction again, like number 7 on the front. So yes, all of them are the same fraction together, making them pretty close to each other, but the p and the 10 are on the same side of the fraction, so they're closer together. So we want to get rid of this 5. So this thing up top, all of it is being multiplied by 5. So to get rid of it, we divide all of it by 5. So these 5's cancel, leaving 10 plus p, and 5 times 5 is 25. 10 is being added to p, so we do the opposite and subtract. We get p equals 15. If you want, I encourage you to pause before I actually solve some of these so you can think like what step would be first. See if you can solve it. Here we have a small fraction where x and 2 are combined and the 3 is farther away from it. It's almost like the plus sign is what's separating the 3 from the x and the 2. So we'd say these two are close together, the 3 is a little farther, so we'll subtract 3 from both sides. Now x is being divided by 2, so we want to do the opposite and multiply both sides by 2. Here, the negative 7 and the x are tight. They're really just part of the same term. They're literally right next to each other. Nothing's separating them like this 1 is being separated by the minus sign. So we want to take care of the 1 first and add 1 to both sides. This is negative 28 equals negative 7x. Then we divide both sides by negative 7 because that's the opposite of multiplying both sides by negative 7. And negative 28 divided by negative 7 is positive 4. Good luck, guys. You'll do great. Study well.